When we left off before the break, you had testified to the November of 2016 regarding the Forerunner, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe what, if anything, you did during that test in relation to the engine or the engine block?
Excuse me. Yes. We had information that the firearm was stored in the engine block, so we took photographs and video representation of the engine block with a replica firearm, placing it in different spots around the engine block.
And just looking at the engine block generally while you were there, did you see any areas where something that was consistent with the size of the revolver that was recovered in this case would fit?
Yes.
What did you observe in that regard?
There were several places, like over by the battery. You could tuck it in next to the battery, nice spot there. There was another place by the wheel well on actually both sides. There were several places that would fit.
So you found several places where that would fit?
Yes.
I approach witness, Ron?
You may.
You're showing 3 photographs, Detective, without a replica firearm. Do you recognize those 3 photographs?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are photographs of the engine block of the Toyota 4Runner.
You realize that the photographs be entered as the next 3 exhibits and evidence?
Let's receive them as 366 A, B, and C.
Detective, just placing 366A on the screen. Does that show the area of the engine block that we were discussing, sir?
I have no display.
It's coming.
I'm sure it is.
Do you see that now, sir?
Yeah, I do.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of the engine block of the Toyota 4Runner?
It is.
Does that include an area where you were able to place an item of similar size to the revolver that was recovered in this case?
Correct.
And is this the area of the battery that you were talking about?
Yes, the battery and a little forward on the right-hand side.
That's a touch screen in front of you, sir. Can you show where we're talking about?
Yeah, it was here and over in here.
Placing exhibit 366 on the screen, does that show another area that you observed of the engine block?
Yes.
Was that also an area that would appear to fit something of that size and shape?
Yeah, we
Calls for speculation. This is all speculation.
Overruled.
Go ahead, sir.
yes, in this area here.
Just placing exhibit 366 C on the screen. Does that show the area we've been talking about as well, the area near the battery?
Yes, that's correct.
You indicated that you also found an area on both of the wheel wells, is that correct?
Well, when I say the wheel wells, I mean where the wheels would have been, like that direction. I didn't mean in the wheel wells.
But in any event, you were able to place an item of similar size and shape in various places in that engine?
That's correct.
And Detective, in the placing of that item in the various locations you've testified to, did it appear to be secure, meaning that it wouldn't necessarily fall out if it went over a bump?
Sustained, rephrase.
Did you place the item that you placed that was of similar size to the .38 caliber revolver that you've observed numerous times in this case? Did you place it in an area where it was secure inside the engine block?
Objection.
Grounds?
There is. The court's prior ruling, the item wasn't of similar size. The question is, again, not only contrary to the court's ruling, it's also misleading. And leading at top of all that.
Sustained as to the leading nature of the question.
Detective, what was your observation, first, of the relative size of the item that you were using as a replica compared to the the item, the 38 caliber revolver involved in this case. What are your observations of the size of those two items?
The replica was of a semi-automatic weapon, and they're two separate weapons, but, I mean, similar in size. I mean, I can't give you exact, but they're similar.
And what were your observations when you placed the replica semi-automatic that was similar in size to the revolver in this case? What were your observations as to whether or not, when you placed it in various areas of the engine block, whether it appeared to be...
Leading and characterization would be a simple hurdle.
What were your observations, sir, when you placed it in areas?
A couple of spots were snug, let's say. They're pretty snug. And one of them was, I'll say, was a little loose.
But there were areas that were what? Did you describe?
Snug.
Snug?
Correct.
Now, Sergeant Detective, moving on to a different area, you're aware that, as you previously testified, at least one of the defendant's cellular telephones, specifically a BlackBerry, a Z10, was ultimately obtained and downloaded by Special Agent Kelch of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Is that correct?
I'm aware of that.
And are you aware that he produced a voluminous 400-plus page report of the contents of that device?
Correct.
Are you also aware, Detective, that with the electronic version of Special Agent Kelch's report, you can produce text messages in a form where it's not just chronological by text messages received, but in fact chronological based upon just text between two people?
That is correct.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Detective, I'm just showing you a 3-page document. I'd ask you if you recognize that, sir.
I do.
No objections to that.
Detective, what you've just been shown and that there is no objection to, is this a 3-page report showing 70 text messages between the phone, the Z10, that Agent Kelch downloaded the contents purportedly belonging to Aaron Hernandez, and one of the contacts listed as JPD.
That is correct.
Your Honor, this 3-page document be marked as next number.
Without objection?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Exhibit 367.
Just placing 367 on the screen. Just want to call your attention to one of the text messages listed as April 1st, 2013 at 3:26 p.m. Can you just read those 3 words right there?
Okay, cool, bro. I kind of fucked up right now. I got shot 2 weeks ago, but nigga gone be straight 8, small thing to a giant doe.
Is it fair to state on this exhibit, sir, exhibit 367, that the text messages appear to start on or around March 30th, 2013? Is that correct?
That is correct.
And they end at May 31st, 2013?
That is correct.
And without going through the text and having you read them, is it fair to state there's some reference to Mr. Hernandez's shoulder injury?
That is correct.
Now, as far as any text, if in existence, between these two individuals, JPD and the defendant, did you have any text messages or any phones that were in existence prior to March 30th, 2013?
In my possession?
Yeah, were you able to obtain a cell phone that had any texts prior to that date
No.
from Mr. Hernandez?
No, I did not.
Detective, I'm going to show you 2 large boards. Do you recognize these to be fair and accurate representations, calendars for July 2012 as well as February 2013?
I do.
The calendars be marked as the next number to group.
Is there an objection?
to that or the kitchen sink.
All right, we'll deal with the calendars now. 368, 369.
And lastly, Detective, I believe you testified earlier that you were at some point able to determine that the SUV that you observed on the video, in fact, parked to the left-hand side of Tremont Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that prior to that you had not noticed that ever before.
I didn't notice it go to the left, no.
I'm just going to play for you a portion of what's been entered as Exhibit 268.
So we're, okay, well, never mind.
Now, Detective, as I fast forward the video, Exhibit 268, past the point we're at now, which for the record was 2:21 a.m., prior to the conversation with Mr. Bradley on October 8th, 2013, had you ever noticed from watching the video what appears to be figures coming up the street?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Had you ever, and from an investigative perspective, Detective, had you, previous to October 8th, 2013, focused your attention on the sidewalk area of Tremont Street just before the Tufts garage?
Objection, we would object to the playing of this video again. Cumulative.
I think that we've covered this, Mr. Hagan.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Detective. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Yes, enough.
Mr. Baez.
May it please the court, Mr. Hagan. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Baez.
Now, we met about 8 months ago at the police department for the first time, right?
That's incorrect.
You weren't there during the evidence inspection?
No, sir, I was not.
Okay. So we met shortly in court during one of the pre-hearings then, right?
That's the first time we met, sir.
Okay. And since then, we really haven't had any conversations about any substance, correct?
No, we have not.
Okay. Now, your testimony today has covered a wide range of topics. I'm going to try and just stick to some that we may have not covered before. Let's start with the cell phones that you testified not being able to recover or didn't recover as it relates to Mr. Hernandez, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have the cell phone that Mr. Bradley had on July 16, 2012?
No, I do not.
Okay. Are you aware that he had 2 cell phones?
I am.
Okay. And he didn't give you either one of those?
No, he did not.
Okay. Do you have the cell phone that he had, that Mr. Bradley had on him February 13th of 2013?
No, I do not.
Okay. Did he make you aware he had 2 cell phones at that time?
I'm not sure if he had 2 at that time. I know he had 1.
Okay. And he never, oh, you're only aware of 1?
That I remember, yes.
Okay. But subsequent to that, you've been able to look at the records and see that he had 2 phones at that time, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And he didn't give you either one of those?
One, he was unable to. He was left behind at Tootsie's that night, I believe.
According to his testimony,
Yes,
right?
according to him, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Were you able to speak to the manager at Tootsie's?
I did not. He
Okay.
was spoken to, but I did not speak to him.
Did you review those statements?
Yes,
Okay. And you're aware that the manager of Tootsie's informed the police that the phone was returned to Mr. Bradley, correct?
The objection is overruled, ladies and gentlemen. You may consider that question and any testimony by this officer not for the truth of what was said by someone at Tootsie's, but only insofar as it impacts your assessment of the police investigation.
Are you aware of that, sir?
I don't recall that part, sir. I don't recall that part.
Okay. Do you recall the part where the manager mentioned that there were approximately 15 males at Tootsie's that night in this party?
I don't recall the exact amount of number, no. I know he said there was a party there.
Okay. A significant number, a lot more than 4 guys, right?
I don't recall the number.
Which evening did you ask about, sir?
The February 13th.
Do you have a transcript of that, sir?
We just have the audio. Did you hear the audio?
It's been a while.
Okay. But you're the lead detective, right?
Correct?
You're in charge of the file.
That's correct.
Okay. And you came here today to testify to a wide range of topics, right?
Correct?
Okay. But you can't represent to this jury that you heard the audio tape of the manager at Tootsie's who mentioned that he gave the phone back to Mr. Bradley that evening.
Objection.
Overruled, and again, you may receive that testimony with the same limiting instruction.
It's been a while since I listened to that interview. I don't recall how many people he said were in the party. I don't recall off the top of my head that he said that he returned the phone to Bradley. I don't recall that, sir.
Okay. Could you recall any of that audio statement to the police?
It was, my memory's limited on that, sir. They were there that night. There was a party there. He remembers Darren Hernandez being there. I don't have a specific memory of the rest of the conversation, sir.
Okay. Now, sir, you testified earlier this morning that you didn't record Mr. Frier's conversations, right? Your conversation with Mr. Frier at the hospital?
That is correct.
Okay, and you used the term it wasn't conducive for recording. Do you remember that?
I did.
Okay. Fair to say that immediately after an event is the best time to get information, right?
Sometimes, yes.
And that's when the incident is freshest in someone's mind.
Sometimes, yes.
Are you saying that other times, if an event just happened, it's not fresh in their mind? Is that the statement you're making?
There are times when people are distraught and they don't tell you fully what happened because of the emotional state they're in.
I understand that, but my question...
That's my answer.
Okay, that's... All right, so he was emotional at the time.
That's correct.
Okay, and that wasn't conducive to recording.
Correct.
You would agree that in a homicide investigation, it's most important to document and record as much as possible so that there's no question when it comes to the people.
You would like to have that happen, yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about interviewing a street sweeper. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
Okay. And you spoke with him that night?
Correct.
Shortly after the incident?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you record that conversation?
No, I did not.
Okay. And was that not conducive for recording as well?
No.
So if there's a dispute between what he told you that night and what he didn't, that in fact would never be resolved because you didn't record it.
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
So the fact that you didn't record the street sweeper, sir, if there's a dispute in what he told you or didn't tell you that evening, that could be answered if you had recorded it, correct?
No, I wrote down what he said.
But you didn't record him, did you, sir?
Do you mean an audio recording?
Correct.
Is that what you heard? I did
Correct.
not audio record him, no.
And you wrote down every word he said?
Not every word, no.
Okay.
I took
you have any
notes.
notes of what you said to him that evening?
I don't have them on me, no.
There, in fact, did become a debate as to what he told you that evening. Did there not, sir?
Objection.
No, overruled. I'll allow that question.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. In fact, when the trial began, you,
Sustained.
after the trial began, if I'd like to get the question out.
No. I'll see you at sidebar if you want to make a proffer.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Baez, you may frame that question.
Yes, sir. So after the trial began, you in fact had Mr. McMasters come to court, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the purpose of bringing him here, I guess, was to interview him, right?
Actually, he came to testify.
He came to testify.
Correct.
And when he came to testify, you had an extensive interview with him.
I had an interview with him.
You had an interview with him.
Correct.
Okay. So do you do some interviews that aren't extensive?
Depends on what you mean by extensive.
Okay. I mean, ask him everything he knows.
Like to do that in all my interviews.
Okay. So when you asked him everything he knew, did you record it then?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So, and in there, he made statements to you, correct?
That's correct.
And these statements were different than what you had put in your report, correct?
That is correct.
Significantly different.
Correct.
Okay. And are you aware of whether he ever testified?
He did not. Strike that in front of the jury? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
He did not.
Okay. Now, you testified about this whole video canvas you did, right?
Correct.
And how you went and got information or video from Cure?
It was done. It was not done by me.
Okay. Do you have in your possession any of the chain of custody as it relates to the video of Cure?
The chain of custody, sir?
Chain of custody documents.
Occupants?
Documents.
Oh, documents. I'm sorry.
I'm a little cold in my
that-
voice is not coming out.
That's fine. No, I do not.
Okay. So do you have any documentation of a receipt that you may have or may not have given to Cure as to exactly when you picked up this video?
No.
Okay. Do you have any documentation that traces, once you got video from Cure, where it was placed?
What do you mean by place, sir?
You put it in an evidence locker?
No, it's given to the squad.
Okay. So once you get it at the squad, is there any documentation as to what you did with it?
No, it was downloaded into electronic file and kept in the case file.
So there's no documentation as to what you did with it once you got it, right?
Documentation? No, there's not.
Okay. And there's no documentation this time. Which cameras you actually received from Cure, correct?
They're actually listed on the video.
I know they're listed in what
Okay,
you have
all right.
now, but my question is, you don't have anything that says on July 17th, 2012, I picked up cameras 1, 7, 5, 9, 13, 22, and 14 from Pure Lounge.
Not that extensive.
Okay. Not that extensive. Okay, well, how about any documentation?
No, like a receipt or anything like that? No, sir.
Okay. And you're aware as a police officer, specifically a detective, that when you receive items of evidence, that you create a chain of custody for that evidence, right?
It depends. I mean, on video, you get video from establishment, it's documentary report, but there's no receipt or anything like that, no.
If you pick up an item of evidence at the scene, and it's let's say, a hairbrush, that item is documented, right?
Correct.
When it's collected.
Correct.
Right? And that item is then placed in an evidence bag.
Correct.
Right? And the evidence is then sealed, right?
Correct.
And and people sign over the seal to ensure that there's been no tampering with that evidence, right?
Correct.
Okay? And all of these precautions are taken when you collect a specific piece of evidence. And what you're telling this jury now is when it comes to video, you don't have to do any of that, right?
Actually, you said if I collect a hairbrush from the scene. Video from Cure wasn't the scene.
I understand that, but that's a significant item of interest in an investigation, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And there was no documentation whatsoever or a chain of custody ever created for the video of Cure, correct?
Sergeant Talbot wrote a report about trying to get the video. I mean, if that's what you're talking about? I'm just read a report.
My question to you, sir, is did you, and it's very specific, is there a chain of custody for the video dealing with Cure?
No.
Now, you talked about, during direct examination, some people you spoke with, including Paige IL, right?
Correct.
And at one point, when you did that Hyundai Santa Fe thing, a whole list was compiled of people who were at Cure, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I think it came to 120 some odd people.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, and I guess the strategy was to check that list and see who owned a Hyundai Santa Fe, right?
Correct.
Okay, how many of those people did you question? And let's exclude Paige and her friend Brian Schmidt, who works at Cure. How many of the patrons did you speak with and ask them as to whether they saw any incident dealing with a spilled drink?
Besides those two?
Yeah.
I believe it's one other.
Okay.
Not counting the men in the BMWs. Are we including them?
Correct. No, I'm talking about regular patrons.
Regular patrons. Sorry, one other.
Okay. And that was Paige IL's friend.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody outside of that 120 people did you talk to and ask them, hey, did you see Aaron Hernandez?
No.
Hey, did you see any spilled drink incident?
No.
Okay, so you didn't talk to any of those people, right?
That's correct.
And Alexander Bradley, when you spoke with him, never mentioned anything about him taking a picture with a fan, right?
No, he didn't.
Okay, and you later found that out through Jamie Furtado, who took the photo, right?
Yes.
And at that time, did you go looking for this fan?
No, he did not.
Okay. And you're aware that Aaron Hernandez was in Club Cure for a total of just 9 minutes, right?
9 change, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll debate with you on the change,
Okay.
but in this 9 minutes, the fact of a fan walking up to Aaron Hernandez, having a conversation with him, asking him for a photograph, then going and asking Jamie Furtado for the ability to go take it in the back room. Jamie Furtado denying that. And then Aaron Hernandez coming and asking Jamie Furtado to go and take the photo. And then going back into the back room, actually sitting there, taking the photograph, and then returning. That takes a significant amount of time, right?
No.
Well, it takes a period of time that would cut down that timeline, right?
Which timeline are you discussing?
Timeline of 9 minutes.
Yeah, sure, it did take up some time, obviously.
And seeking a timeline of what actually occurred in Cure would be important, right?
Well, I mean, he was there for 9 minutes. What happened, happened.
My question to you, sir, is seeking a timeline as to what happened in Cure is important, right?
Yes.
Okay? And in fact, if that's what Mr. Bradley says precipitated all of this, the reason we're all here today, it would be important for you to find that out, right?
Find what out, sir?
What happened inside Cure?
Well, we have Mr. Bradley's statements.
Exactly. And that's all you relied on, right?
No.
Okay? So, but you didn't think it was important enough to go and find the individual who the photograph was taken of?
No, I didn't find
Or
that
get the
important.
photograph, right?
No.
Okay? Because the photograph might have a timestamp on it, right?
Well, obviously it happened between those 9 minutes.
My question to you is the photograph would have had a timestamp on it,
That's
right?
correct. It possibly could.
And that timestamp could give you information.
Of the time the photograph was taken? Yes, it probably could.
And you never went and even pursued that avenue.
No, I did not.
Okay? Then, Mr. Bradley tells you that they go to another bar across the street, right?
Correct.
And while there, 2 individuals from the BMW came over, right?
Well, he thought they were, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Bradley specifically says the one with the braids, right?
That's correct.
And he also mentions another one that matches the description of Mr. Sanchez, right?
Correct.
Okay. So according to Mr. Bradley, Mr. Sanchez and Mr. De Abreu cross the street and go over to this other bar. When did you find out that was a lie?
Objection.
Sustained in that
When
form.
did you find out that wasn't true?
Objection.
No, overruled.
It's not true, but not a lie. I mean, he's truthful but inaccurate. How's that?
Okay.
He's truthful but inaccurate.
I'm very specific
He
to my
thought
question.
they went across the street. That was his thought. He was truthful but inaccurate.
Okay. Well, you're a great advocate for Mr. Bradley. There's no doubt there. But my question is
Sustained as to the commentary. Put a question.
my question for you is specific, and that is, when did you find out that wasn't true?
The minute he told me.
Okay. And
I
you
had already-
didn't confront him with that when you had this interview with him, right?
Did we? I don't recall if we confronted him about that.
You didn't.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that the entire interview was on tape, right?
Correct?
Okay. Now, I have 2 reports from you, and I'm going to go over one at a time. And this is the day you actually interviewed Mr. Bradley at the for the first time. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Is that your signature on the bottom there, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and that's the police report you wrote in reference to your activities on that day?
Correct.
Okay, and when does it say the interview started?
6:22 p.m.
And when does it say it ended?
You scribble over it, but it could be 8:08 or 8:03.
So
It might be 8:03.
How long is that in an interview?
A little short of 2 hours.
Okay, and what is this, read the first line there to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Mr. Bradley was in our custody the entire day of October 8, 2013, and Sergeant Detective Sullivan and I provided Mr. Bradley with lunch, dinner, and beverages.
Okay, so you're only recording him from 6:22 to 8:09 p.m., right?
That's correct. Is it 8:09? It looked like 8:08 earlier. Okay, that's
Take my
fine.
word for it?
That's fine. Around there.
All right. So you record him for an hour and a half, about,
A little more.
okay? But he's in your custody the entire day, right?
Correct.
And you take him out to lunch and dinner?
I didn't take
Oh,
him
you
out.
didn't take him out.
I
You
didn't
bought
take
him
him
some
out to lunch and
lunch?
dinner. We got him lunch. We got him dinner on the way home.
Dinner.
On the way
Okay.
back to wherever he was.
So you didn't record the entire conversation that you had with Mr. Bradley on that day, correct?
Mr. Byers, any conversation I had with Mr. Bradley outside of the interview, small talk. if that at all. I mean, we didn't converse with him at all, a lot that day. He was with his attorney, I mean, part of the day. I mean, my interaction with him was minimal for conversation-wise.
Of course. So your entire interaction with Mr. Bradley was not recorded, correct?
If you want to put it that way, then no.
Well,
The interview for the interview for the proffer was recorded.
Let's take the statement that he made to you on the 18th. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Can you read the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the times where he's on tape? They're certain for your convenience.
12:12 p.m. and this ended at 1:35 p.m.
And do you make the same statement about him being in your custody all day?
That's correct.
Okay. And the meals you bought him?
That is correct.
Okay. So this is just an hour and 13 minutes, right?
Correct.
Okay. But yet you had access, or you were with Mr. Bradley all day.
Yes.
If I can have just a moment. Oh,
1 second. All set.
okay. You also, Mr. Bradley told you that when they left Boston that night on July of 2012, that they ran into a toll booth guy, right?
Well, they had to go through a toll booth to get back to Connecticut. That's correct.
And do you recall Mr. Bradley telling you about this mysterious group of guys wearing City of Angels t-shirts?
Yes.
Okay. And he also told you that the toll booth guy had a City of Angels t-shirt on, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you went and tracked down who the toll booth person would have been, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And that gentleman told you that
Objection.
he never owned any City of Angels t-shirt.
The objection's overruled. We'll receive this subject to the same limiting instruction I've given earlier. It's offered not for the truth of what was said, but as it relates to the police investigation.
He told you he had never owned any City of Angels t-shirt, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. In fact, didn't know what you were talking about.
He didn't own a T-shirt. That's correct.
Okay. Now, I noticed you talked about Tootsies and you were talking about all the records. Just a brief thing, and I'm sorry for bouncing around with this. But you testified about getting certain records from Tootsies, right?
Correct.
Okay. In a follow-up conversation with Mr. Bradley, he told you about a stripper that he had read on the news by the name of Daniela Rajic.
Correct.
Okay.
Objection, relevance.
And
I'll see you at sidebar.
okay, I want to talk to you about this little reenactment that you guys did. Now, we saw the testimony and the photographs of, I guess you were mentioning that a gun was placed by the police in the hood of his car, right?
The engine compartment. That's correct.
You didn't even take a revolver and use it as an exemplar, correct?
No, we were limited. We had a semi-automatic replica.
Okay. Fair to say they're very different in size,
Again, that depends.
very different in shape, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay. Revolver's more round, it has a cylinder.
It's only round at the cylinder.
Okay. The barrel is round.
Barrels are round in semi-automatics also.
Okay. But actually the exterior of a semi-automatic.
And that's the frame.
Correct, the frame.
That's correct.
Different, right?
Yes.
Okay. So different kinds of guns, but that didn't matter to you, right?
I mean, it mattered, but what I had on hand at the time, that's what I was using.
And you never took that that semi-automatic, place it in the under the hood, and drive it from Connecticut to Boston, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, because that would be pretty stupid to do, right?
No, overruled.
Yes, it would be stupid to do.
Okay, and in addition to that, of course, you run the risk of the gun falling out, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
Plus,
and
that
if
car,
it's falling
the car
out,
is not
Hold
registered.
on one at a time, please.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You may finish your
The car's
answer.
not even, the car's not registered anymore.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were finished, sir. I didn't want to.
No, please, that's fine, Mr. Bias.
This car's not registered, so you wouldn't drive it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it'd be illegal to drive that car on the road.
Okay. You're afraid you're going to get pulled over by cops?
No, God forbid there was an accident.
I'm sorry?
God forbid there was an accident. There's no insurance, no, it would just not be done.
Okay, and you can't get a police cruiser to go in front or in the back?
Still, I'm not taking that risk.
Okay. Did it have insurance on it when you did the test ride downtown Boston?
I think it was still registered at that time, I believe, yes. I
Okay.
believe.
So no traffic laws were broken in the making of that video?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So you never took the trip from Connecticut to Boston to see if, in fact, a gun would fall out of the, I guess, hood area of the car, right?
No.
Okay. So you can't make any representations as to that, right?
That if a gun would fall out,
Right.
I cannot know. It might fall out, it might not fall out.
Okay. And you also can't make any representations as to where that was placed, right?
No, I don't know the exact spot where that place.
And that's because Mr. Bradley didn't give you any details on that,
That's correct.
right? So you testified to this jury about being able to find spots where it could be hidden and things like that without having any of that information, right?
I just knew the engine compartment and I tried to find spots that it would fit.
Okay. While it's parked.
Yes.
Okay, so while it was parked, not moving, the gun didn't fall out, right?
No, it did not.
And that's all you could say.
That's it.
Okay. A different gun.
Correct.
All right. I now want to bring out this video. Let's try here. All right. Now, do you have any training in forensic shooting reconstruction, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do any of these gentlemen in the car have any training in forensic reconstruction?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So you guys are just doing a little play acting here, right?
Sustained as to that term.
You guys are just, I don't know how to describe it. You guys are just doing your best.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I noticed you got somebody that you said was a similar size and height of Eric Hernandez to be the passenger, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, that's Detective Ant Williams?
Anthony Williams.
Okay, but they call him Ant, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I've seen him in the courtroom out here in the hallway. He's been out here a few times, right?
Yes, he has.
Okay. He's not a big guy, right?
No, he's not.
Okay. In fact, he's about my height, right?
Maybe, around there.
Okay. And I'm not the same size as Alexander Bradley, right?
That is correct.
Okay. He's much bigger, right?
At that time, back in 2012, yes, he was.
Okay. In fact, he weighed about 260 pounds that evening, right?
I don't think it was that heavy. It was more like 250 maybe.
Okay. Are you aware he testified that he weighed 260 pounds that night?
I'm not aware of his testimony of that, but he has told me in the past it was 250.
Okay. So the other half of the equation here isn't quite accurate, is it, sir?
No, it's not.
Okay. So the size of the guy who the exemplar of Aaron Hernandez has to go over is much smaller than that of Alexander Bradley.
That is correct.
Okay. And I'm going to fast forward into this part right here. Actually, wait, let me go back a little. Okay. Now, did Alexander Bradley tell you when he described this incident that he was just lying there taking a nap like Detective Williams is here?
No, he did not.
Okay. You do see Detective Williams appear to be sleeping?
Objection.
Overruled.
Do you see that there?
He's not sleeping.
Okay, well, he's got his eyes closed, he's
Actually,
got his head tilted.
they're not closed.
Okay, they're open? Okay. He doesn't even have his hands on the steering wheel, does he?
No, he does not.
Okay. Did Mr. Bradley tell you that he was driving the car with no hands that night?
Mr. Byers, no, he did not.
Okay. And of course, as you see here, the car is not moving either, right?
That's correct.
And at no time during this thing that you guys did the car ever move?
On this, no.
Okay. The car was in park the whole time?
Correct?
Okay. And there is no process for which Detective Williams there is putting the seat back, is there?
There's no what?
He's not holding the seat back.
As of right now?
Correct.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And at no point during this reenactment here did the sleeping man there on the driver's side,
Objection.
Rephrase.
did Detective Williams take and videotape how long it takes to go back?
No, I don't believe that happened, no.
Okay. So that part is not brought up at all, right?
No, sir.
Okay. And all right, I saw him blink there. Did Mr. Bradley ever give you indication how far back the seat was?
No, he just said he said put the seat back. He never said how far.
So that far back is just a guess.
Pretty much, yes.
Now, at this point, you have this detective reaching out, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And he's supporting his entire body weight with his left elbow.
That appears that way, yes.
Okay. And then he's using his, I guess, his right arm to shoot, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, are there any measurement devices that you utilized that afternoon to show in what direction this individual might be shooting?
No.
Okay. Is there any type of measurement that will give you any type of trajectory as to where this gun might, or where this shoot, if you were to fire a gun, in what direction it would go?
No, it is not.
Okay. So you don't know if he's shooting out the tires or shooting in any direction or even being able to physically hit another object, right?
He's not shooting anything.
I could see that.
Okay.
Well, my point-
The whole purpose of the exercise is not to have him shoot anything or to show shooting. The whole purpose of the exercise is to show that a man his size can climb over and come out that window.
Come out that window and shoot though, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay,
it's just
so-
a hand motion. It's not there for trajectory.
Correct. But my point is, if the whole purpose is to see whether the individual can reach out, you should be able to actually then measure the directionality of where it is actually possible to shoot, correct? That would be important, right?
It's obvious it's possible to shoot.
Okay. That's obvious to you
Correct.
because you didn't do any measurements, right?
Objection. Sustained in that form.
Now, that's not a representation you can make at all because you didn't take any trajectory measurements, correct? Objection.
Rephrase, what is not accurate?
sure I'll try and ask it a little clearer. Sir, you can't make any determinations as to where this individual can shoot based on his range of movement because you didn't measure a single thing.
Objection.
No, you may explain.
Wasn't my purpose.
Okay. So the answer to my question is no. You
Yeah,
can't,
it
right?
was not my purpose to do that.
Okay. And you can't make any representations whatsoever as to the directions of where this individual would be able to shoot from, right?
Not my purpose again.
So the answer is no, right?
That's correct.
All right. Now, thanks. Then you guys went back and did it again with another group of individuals, right?
I did not participate in this one.
Okay. But you're aware and you testified about some photographs, right?
Correct?
Okay. And this is a different set of guys,
That is correct.
different sizes.
That is correct.
Okay. And here, well, we can't tell if this guy's sleeping. Here you have another individual, but his, he's keeping his hands in.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Bradley never told you that they came back around and there was a second shooting, right?
No, sir.
Okay. So this is all based on, this version is all based on what Alexander Bradley told you guys.
Correct.
Okay. And so was the first version.
Correct.
Okay. So you got two completely different versions based on the statements of Alexander Bradley, right?
Objection.
Rephrase that.
The first version, you base that on what Alexander Bradley told you, right?
Correct.
And you base that on what Alexander Bradley told you, right?
I did not do that.
Okay. But the police based that on what
Yes, that's
Alexander
correct.
Bradley told you. If I can have just a moment, Judge, I may be... Now, you testified under direct examination that when you interviewed Alexander Bradley on the 8th, he told you there were 6 shots.
I believe so. That's correct.
Okay. And he never said anything about 5 shots, right?
The number 5?
He never said anything about hearing, seeing, shooting 5 shots.
No, he did not.
Okay. And you're aware that his testimony went from 6 shots on October 8th. You're aware of that,
I
right?
am.
I'm sorry?
I am.
Okay. And to on, when he testified before the grand jury, to 5 shots.
That is correct.
Okay. And it's your testimony that you did not influence him or direct him in any way, shape, or form on either one of these days when you spent the whole day with him.
That is correct.
He did that on his own.
Objection.
No, overruled.
He did that on his own, right?
Apparently.
But I'm not sure if I have any further questions. you spoke with Mr. Freire at the hospital, he told you that he had been shot in both arms, right?
Yes.
Overruled.
Sorry?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Now, the search warrant for the BMW, you filled that out, right?
I did.
Okay. And do you recall and on the application of that, it has certain check boxes, right?
Correct?
And do you recall checking the 2 boxes that says that the car is intended for use or has been used as a means of committing a crime? You recall checking that
Can I
box?
see it?
I'm sorry?
Can I see it, please?
Yes, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Right there.
Yeah, okay. Okay. That's correct.
Do you recall checking that, sir?
I do.
Okay. And that's what you represented under oath, that the car was intended for use or has been used as a means of committing a crime?
You're saying the car,
Correct.
okay? It's-
BMW.
It's not specific to the car what I'm looking for.
You know that a search warrant, a petition for a search warrant, it must be filled out with specificity, correct? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You do it under oath, right?
I do.
Because it's a big thing to ask a judge to sign off on a search warrant, right?
It is.
And you're making specific representations under oath to the court when asking for this thing, right?
That is correct.
And you specifically checked that box off, right?
I did.
Okay. And you also checked the box that it is evidence of a crime or is evidence of criminal activity.
Correct.
Okay. Just one more moment, Judge. Now, part of what you did as well, sir, is you collected Brooke Wilcox's computer,
I did.
okay? And when you spoke to her, she said that she did not run searches until a couple days later, right?
I know she said she actually searched things herself, but the timeline, I don't recall.
Do you recall her telling you that it was not until a couple of days later? Do you recall that, sir?
No, I know she said she conducted searches, but the timeline of her search, I don't recall.
Can I have just a moment, Judge? Would you disagree with the statement, sir, that she came back to the laptop and saw the news page a couple of days later, not the same night?
May I see that?
May I approach?
You may.
Actually, I'm going to get the actual transcript. This is the statement I'm referring to.
This is not the transcript, is that correct?
Correct.
May I see the transcript, sir?
We're getting it right now.
All right, thank you.
May I approach the witness? Line 8, page 33, Counselor.
The question, okay, yes.
Okay. So when you interviewed her on the 15th of October, she told you that she actually run these searches a couple of days later, right?
According to that transcript, that's correct.
And not the night of the shooting, correct?
According to that transcript, that's correct.
In fact, the whole reason you confiscated Brooks' computer was because she made the allegations and Bradley made the allegations that it was Aaron who was running these searches and not her,
That's correct.
right? Are you aware that she came in here and testified that she ran those searches that night?
Sustained.
Have you been made aware that her testimony has since changed?
Sustained.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Is there any redirect?
Good question. First detective, you were asked some questions by Mr. Baez about the search warrant boxes that you checked off. Explain what that meant and what you did.
A murder happened inside that car. So that car becomes part of a murder investigation. That's why the box was checked off. There was illegal, the bullets fired into that car were part of, in my mind, they were illegal.
So when you checked the box off, meaning criminal activity, what criminal activity were we talking about?
Murder.
And the evidence within that car that would be relevant towards?
The murder investigation would be the bullets, ballistic evidence.
By checking those boxes, did you mean anything other than that?
No, sir.
Now, Mr. Baez, just prior to that, asked you about Alexander Bradley's statements in October of 2008 regarding the number of shots. You recall those questions?
I do?
And do you recall the very initial statement Mr. Bradley gave, his level of certainty as to 6 shots? In other words, do you recall whether he said definitely 6 shots or probably 6 shots?
It's probably.
Objection, Judge, I asked that he use the transcript.
I'm sorry?
Would you like?
If he's,
Do you recall what Mr. Bradley's words were relative to whether or not he was sure of the 6 shots?
His exact words? No, I do not.
May I approach witness, Your
You
Honor?
may.
The highlighted part, I'm assuming?
Yes, please.
All right, how many shots, question, how many shots do you think you were fired? Answer, oh, that gun has 6 bullets, so he had to fire every bullet in there. Question, how many did you hear? 6, probably 6, about 6.
6, probably 6, about 6.
That is correct.
And the next time on the 18th, is it fair to state that he said 5 or 6?
I missed that part, sir.
His next statement he gave on the 18th, did he say 5 or 6?
That's correct.
And then ultimately in the grand jury, you're aware from Mr. Baez's question, he eventually said 5.
He did.
Now, on that note, Detective, Mr. Baez asked you a number of questions about your time alone with Mr. Bradley. You recall those questions?
I do.
Now, let's get into that for a moment. When you spent that first day with him on October 8th, 2013, you had to go pick him up somewhere, right?
I did.
Where did you have to pick him up from?
A correctional facility in Hartford, Connecticut.
And were you aware at the time that Mr. Bradley was represented by counsel?
I was.
What was your understanding as to whether or not it was even proper and permissible for you to speak to Mr. Bradley when he had been represented by counsel?
You do not speak to him.
And when you say it was small talk, at least for the drive up, did that involve perhaps getting him something to eat on the way up?
No, we didn't get anything to eat on the way up. He slept most of the ride on the way up anyways.
So no conversation to ride up?
Like small talk. But he did fall asleep at one time, and that was the majority of the ride.
And then as far as when you first get up here to this courthouse on October 8th, 2013, his attorneys were here, correct?
That is correct.
Other than asking him what type of sandwich he may want for lunch, did you have any other conversation with him before a proffer agreement was signed?
Again, small talk. I mean, barely spoke to him.
And then after Mr. Bradley gave the proffer statement, you had to drive him back to Connecticut, a 2-hour drive, correct?
That is correct.
During that 2-hour drive, again, were you under the assumption that Mr. Bradley was still represented by counsel?
He was.
And what was your understanding as to whether or not it would have been proper for you to continue to question him or talk to him about the incident?
It would not be proper.
And did you talk to him about the incident?
I did not.
What did you do or talk to him about on the ride back?
Again, small talk.
Did you eventually, Mr. Baez suggests you took him to dinner. What did he get for dinner on the ride home back to the correctional facility?
We had to use a drive-through because he was in custody. He was in handcuffs and shackles. We couldn't take him into a restaurant. We went through a drive-through and we got him takeout.
And without getting into the details, is it fair to state that the next time you had to pick him up on October 25th, 2013, was it similar to what we just discussed?
Exactly the same.
And in the same situation, when you were not interviewing him on tape with his attorneys present, were there any conversations with him about the incidents?
No, sir.
I just want to ask you a quick question about Mr. Bradley, Mr. Baez's questions about the car test and what Mr. Bradley had told you. You recall those questions, Mr. Baez?
I do.
Now, when the first car test was done, the one that you actually participated in, the one that was videotaped with Detective Williams, at that point, had Mr. Bradley actually given you details as far as where the defendant's hands allegedly were when he climbed out the window and fired at that point?
No, we knew he said his feet were on the passenger door, bracing himself across.
But did he ever tell you up to that point where his hands were, Mr. Hernandez?
No, he did not.
So when you conducted the test, were you just making sure that the feet were on the door?
Feet on the door, and a man of his size could come across and work his way out that window.
And other than the feet on the door and whether or not a man of that size could come across the window, was there anything else you were trying to replicate from what Mr. Bradley had told you, or was that it?
That's pretty, until we put Detective Williams in the driver's seat.
And what led to the second test, is it fair to state that was showing the photos to Mr. Bradley?
That's correct. That's correct.
And did he correct you in indicating where Mr. Hernandez's hands were his best memory?
Yes,
And based upon that, was that the reason the second test was done?
that is correct.
So in your mind, again, from an investigative perspective that Mr. Byers was asking about, were these two different versions from Mr. Bradley? I mean, the first version, was he telling you the positioning of the hands?
The witness finish his answer.
Witness may answer the question.
Not two different versions, just an additional piece of information.
The placement of the hands.
Correct.
And I don't want this to come across the wrong way, Detective, and I realize I'm putting you in a little bit of an awkward position, but Detective Williams, who was the driver in the first simulation, is that correct?
That's correct.
What is his, now, although he's short in height, how would you describe his weight?
He weighs 208 pounds.
Okay. So he's, and could you describe what his chest and stomach area is like as far as anything you could observe about that? How would you describe his build?
Stocky.
Now, the questions from Mr. Byers about the gun and whether or not you took a test drive with the gun, you recall those questions?
Yes, I do.
And whether or not the gun would fall out, you recall those questions?
I do.
Did we hear you correctly, though, on direct examination that some of the positions you found were snug?
That's correct.
And can you tell us what you mean by snug? And
It was wedged in there. It was pretty tight.
did it move at all when you tried to move it?
No, we had actually wiggled it out.
You were asked some questions by Mr. Baez, detective, about the toll collector and what Mr. Bradley had told you about the toll collector.
Correct?
And I believe in cross-examination you mentioned that you did find one toll collector who generally fit the description given by Mr. Bradley, correct?
That is correct.
That's the toll collector you interviewed.
Correct?
Did you ever check for toll collectors who would have been on the pike as if you got lost on 128 and were coming back down onto the pike?
No, we didn't have that information at the time.
So you only checked as if the vehicle had gone, you checked for toll collectors as if one's going westbound on the pike and just stays on the pike the entire way?
Well, the way Mr. Bradley said it, that it was like the first or second toll. Those are the Brighton tolls and the Weston tolls after that.
But did you ever check for individuals who may fit Mr. Bradley's description, who may have been working the Mass Turnpike coming from 128, 95, as if you were coming from that route?
I remember we got information that there was We looked for a white man, and then there was women and 2 Asian males working westbound that night. So he was the only white person, male, that was working that night.
Right, but you didn't check for the toll collection.
Oh, no, no, I did not.
And you were unaware at that time as to whether or not the vehicle may have ended up on. Were you aware at that point of whether the vehicle stayed on the Mass Pike or may have gone somewhere else at that point?
At that point, I may have been at that point. I remember something about the latitude longitudes, about the cell towers, something like that.
Now, Detective, moving on to a different topic that Mr. Baez brought up, the Tootsie's receipts. You recall those questions?
I do.
And you also recall Mr. Baez's questions about conversations with the manager of Tootsie's.
Correct.
And there was some question about whether or not the party was large with multiple people. You recall those questions?
Correct.
Are you aware of the fact that your investigation revealed 2 nights at Tootsie's?
Yes, it did.
And do you know which night the manager was referring to?
No, I do not.
Is it your understanding, again, from an investigative perspective, as to whether or not there were more people the first night at Tootsie's or the second night?
I don't know.
You were also asked questions by Mr. Baez about Club Cure and what was done with the video. Recall those questions?
Correct.
Was the video secured by you or other members of the Boston Police Department?
By me.
But did other members of the Boston Police Department seek the Cure video and provide the documentation as to what was done to get it?
Yes.
And that was one of the detectives you mentioned, Sergeant Talbot?
Sergeant Talbot, yes.
Lastly, Detective, you were asked about the photograph with the fan, a number of questions, Mr. Baez. You recall those?
I do.
And Mr. Baez suggested that you didn't look into who the fan was that correct?
That's correct.
But did you interview Jamie Furtado?
I did.
And were you present when Mr. Furtado was presented to the grand jury?
I was.
And did you consider the information Mr. Furtado gave in the course of your investigation?
I did.
And did Mr. Furtado's statement indicate that, in fact, he did take a photograph of the defendant with a fan at around a certain time period?
He did.
Thank you, Detective. No further questions.
You recall Jamie Furtado telling you and testifying that after taking the photo, Aaron left the bar.
Yes, something like that, yes.
Okay. So, you know and have information that after taking this photo, Aaron Hernandez leaves the bar and that there's no spilled drink incident in between, right?
Objection.
Rephrase that. I take it it's in the context of Mr. Furtado.
Yes, sir. So you're aware that Mr. Furtado testifies after taking the photo that he saw Aaron leave the bar?
Objection to when he saw him leave the bar?
No, if that's what you recall him saying.
He said he left the bar. He didn't put a time frame to it.
He said he left right after it, right?
Objection.
No, the witness may answer.
I don't recall it left right after. I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, you talked about the toll booths and not being able to speak to all the toll people. This whole thing is because there was an hour missing in Mr. Bradley's story that night, right?
An hour.
Sustained.
Okay. You recall questioning Mr. Bradley that it doesn't take that long to get from Boston to Connecticut, right?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
And
I thought you were talking about earlier.
right. And then at first, and that's when he tells you, oh, we might have gotten lost.
Right.
Okay. And then I think he said that they stopped for gas or anything like that.
Something like that, yes.
Okay. And then he gave you like a couple of different versions, right?
No, the witness may answer.
What do you mean by versions, Mr.
Stories or explanations, whatever you want to call
I
it.
wouldn't say a couple. Mr. Bradley was iffy on that, let's say. He knew he got lost. He wasn't sure where he got lost at,
Right.
hence lost. But he didn't know where he was lost.
But none of this, you went through his story from A to Z, right?
Objection to story.
Sustained in that phrasing.
You went through his version of events from A to Z, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the thing that stood out to you to question him on was the amount of time he says it took from him to get from Boston to Connecticut, right?
Correct.
But it didn't make sense to you.
Objection. Overruled.
It took longer than you would expect.
You as an experienced detective, you know the distance, you know the area, set up a red flag enough for you to ask about it, right?
Objection, a red flag. No, overruled.
It was a question I wanted answered, yes.
Okay. And that's why you probed further, right?
Correct?
And only then did he tell you about these other possibly getting lost and maybe even making a stop.
Correct.
Is that a yes?
I said correct.
Okay. And then finally, did you press him at all about the fact that he had gone to Boston 3 times a week?
No.
He told you that he had gone to clubs a lot with Aaron in downtown Boston, right?
Okay. You may have,
Yes.
yeah, sure.
Okay. And that, in fact, he and Aaron frequented the clubs about 3 times a week, right?
I know they frequented the clubs, yes.
Okay, specifically in Boston.
Correct?
Okay. And did you press him at all as to how he could get lost?
No, I did not.
You didn't even question that at all, did you?
You got lost, you got lost.
You also didn't question the fact that he said Aaron had a GPS on the whole time.
I don't know about the whole time. He said he actually did, Aaron did use a GPS at one time, he said, I
Do
believe.
you recall him mentioning the GPS immediately after the shooting?
I don't recall the exact when he mentioned it, but he did tell us that Aaron put on a GPS.
So that's something you just don't recall now.
No, I know he said he put on the GPS. When he said it, I don't recall.
That's what I'm saying. That's something you just don't recall, right?
But when he said it, no. But I know he did say it.
Now, you weren't exactly being forthcoming with the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when you said that you cannot speak to someone when they have a lawyer, right?
Why don't you rephrase that question?
Judge, I don't think that's being argumentative.
I'll see you at sidebar. Is that the question?
If you question someone who has a those statements are inadmissible in court, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's what makes it
No,
improper.
they could be.
Yes, they would be. But if you had conversations with them, you could still have conversations with them, correct?
Objection.
And they're just not admitted in court.
Sustained.
Any conversations you have with someone who claims you guys had conversations, it's basically your word against that person's word unless it's on tape, right?
Objection. Sustained.
If you have a conversation with Mr. Bradley that's not tape recorded, no one would ever know, right? Except you and Mr. Bradley?
You may answer that.
And Sergeant Sullivan was with me at the time.
The 2 cops and the convicted drug dealer, right? Move to strike.
Sustained.
Okay. The 3 of you individuals would be the only ones that would know, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And if there's any difference as to what happened in there and it's not being recorded, there's no way for you to prove that whether it happened or didn't, right?
Sustained.
If something is not recorded, sir, I'll strike that. The conversations that you had, the small talk that you mentioned, we have no way of knowing whether it's small talk or anything more substantive because that's not recorded, right, sir?
It seems to me it's been covered, but you may answer that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The conversations that you had, that you designated small talk, it's your designation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's no way to disprove that because those conversations are not on tape.
You just have to believe me.
Just like we have to believe you with your conversation with Mr. McMasters, the street sweeper, right?
Objection. Sustained.
I have no further questions.
Anything further?
Thank you, Ron.
Please watch. folks, why don't we take our lunch recess now, resuming at, see if we can do it.